Hello everybody, Steven here with Cardboard Coalition, and today I figured I would bring you a solo how to play of Architects of the West Kingdom. This is from Renegade Game Studios and Garphill Games, and it's designed by Shem Phillips and S.J. McDonald. Now, as I said, I have this set up as a solo play for the game, which is kind of awesome because in the base box, you get a solo game that you can play. So I'll go through the setup really quick. If you want a slower, more in-depth kind of setup, talk through, you can watch our previous video where I do the how to play for a regular game with multiple players of Architects of the West Kingdom. So let's go ahead and dive into this. So for the solo play, you set it up as normal, right? You put down your black market cards, you put down your reward cards, and you set it up kind of like a two-player, and we'll talk about some of the differences. So the reward cards, you'll have 7, 2 for each player plus 1 more, so there's 7 reward cards. Then you go ahead and put down the debt cards, you put down the multiplier cards, which are over there. So they're debts that you acquire, and the multipliers over there. Same thing with the multipliers. They're used to multiply supplies. And what you do is you just put one of the supplies on top. If you wanted gold, right, you'd go ahead and put the gold on top of the card, which would signify that you have 5 gold. All right, so next you would go ahead and shuffle the apprentices, which we've already done, and we've set them out in the marketplace, or the workshop, sorry. I always like to call it the marketplace in the workshop. Then you would go ahead and set up the building cards. So the first thing you would do, and this is one of the changes for the solo play mode, is you want to take out certain building cards, right? It's the silver market, the wood market, the stone market, and the clay market. And what they call these are the resource market cards. So you take these out of the deck, you put them back in the box, you don't need them anymore, and you go ahead and shuffle up your deck of building cards, just like normal. All right, then you go ahead and you place your clay, your wood, your stone, your gold, your marble, and your silver. And I'll do my best not to say gold when I'm talking about silver. This is gold, Stephen. This is silver. All right, so once that's done, you take your 4 silver and you put them into the tack stand, right? Then it says each player takes their player board. What you're going to do here is, for you, you pick your own player board. And for the AI player, you pick one of these boards. And there's 2 difficulties. There's Constantine, which is the standard difficulty, and then Helena, which you can see her on the card, which is on the back side. And that is the hard difficulty player board. So you decide how you want to play it. We have it set up for the standard difficulty. All right. Once you do that, go ahead and place down markers. Both of your markers go at 7. So we have your marker, right? The red marker for our example. And then you have the AI's marker, and we put them both at 7 on the virtue track, right? You also put one of each of your markers at the bottom of the cathedral, not on any of the slots, but at the bottom of the cathedral. All right. Once that is done, you go ahead and in the regular game, you would take 4 cards. I already have this one set up and had picked their cards. But in a regular game, you would take 4 cards, and there's this drafting that goes on. You can see that in the video for how to play the regular version. But when you're playing by yourself in a solo play, you go ahead and grab 5 cards, and you still pick 3. So you get to look through the 5, you pick 3, you put your remaining cards underneath the build deck. So then after that, we go ahead, you get 3 silver. That's easy to remember because in a regular game, first player gets 3 silver. The next thing that you have to do is go ahead and look at your AI. Your AI gets no silver and no building cards, right? They get no silver, no building cards, right? The other thing that is different now in this setup is you have, and I have to glance over here so I remember the names so I can give you guys the proper names. the scheme cards. So these are the scheme cards over here. And you separate them. So you have brown scheme cards, right? And then you have, they call it black. It looks like gray. Black scheme cards, right? There's 20 of these. So you separate the two. These are future scheme cards. Black are future scheme cards. And now I know, now that I say it, why they're the same back. And we'll explain it in a second. So you shuffle up the future scheme cards and you just make a pile of the future scheme cards, right? Off to the side of the table. Those are all the ones with the black on the backside. All the ones with the brown are your scheme cards. You go ahead and you take those and you shuffle through them, right? And you go ahead and you mix them up and you set them down right next to the AI player board. Once that's done, you are ready to play the game, right? You also have this card, which I have set out. It doesn't tell you to, but I like to set it in the middle so it's an easy reach. There's the solo play rules, and we'll kind of go through how all that works. There's the solo play setup. So a quick reference on the solo play setup. You can flip it over and you have the solo play rules. All right. So your turns, what you do on the board is just the same as a 4-player, 3-player, 2-player. It's exactly the same. When you sit down a meeple, you follow what goes on here. Things like putting meeple down for clay or gold, for stone, for wood, for silver. And if you want a more in-depth explanation of each one, go ahead and check out the How to Play Regular, and it explains each place, right? If you want to go to the marketplace, I keep calling it the marketplace, the workshop, the black market, town center, right? The king store, tax stand, and then you have the guardhouse. Now, one of the things that I messed up on the video, so if you watched my prior video and you're watching this one, I said when you put down your meeple, you pay a silver. That's not true. So you capture other players' meeples, you get paid 1 silver per captured meeple. If you put your meeple here, you can turn in your captured meeples, right? And you get 1 silver. You get to receive 1 silver. You don't pay 1 silver. So that was something I messed up. And I realized it this morning when I was going over the single player. I was like, did I say that right? And I went back and watched it and I said it wrong. So there's the fix. All right. So the game wants you to know there's some things to keep in mind when playing with AI. So I'm just going to go ahead and read through them so you guys understand them. It says things to observe during the game. There's certain things that the AI can and can't do. So the AI does not collect silver, clay, wood, stone, gold, or apprentices or building cards. They get none of those. That's why they don't start with any silver. They don't start with any building cards, right? It doesn't have to pay any building cards when constructing the cathedral, right? Doesn't have to pay any building cards when constructing the cathedral or any goods. So it doesn't have to pay gold, stone, wood, right? Stone, wood, or marble. It doesn't have to pay any of those things. So what happens, and we'll talk about in a minute, the cards will tell you what to do. You just go ahead and do it, right? The AI does not pay the cost to move up the cathedral track. And this is the cathedral track right here, right? They still do put a meeple here in the guild hall. All right. So the AI will collect marble. The AI does collect marble. And so they use it for scoring purposes at the end of the game. Then also the AI can capture your workers off the board and they can sell your workers to the guardhouse. So the AI can go to the guardhouse and it can receive marble instead of silver for all workers. So if they have 5 of your workers and they put him into the guardhouse, they only get 1 marble. As opposed to if you have 5 of their workers and you put it in the guardhouse, you would get 5 silver out of that. All right. So the last thing to keep in mind when you go through this is that the AI can receive and destroy debt cards, right? So just like the normal game, you get debt cards based on certain things, right? And that's over here. You get debt cards when the black market's reset. You get debt cards for every 3 workers that have been put into the guardhouse. Or no, you lose virtue. Sorry, you do not get debt cards. You get debt cards if you have the most workers in the guardhouse when there is a market reset. And we talked about this in the regular how to play. I hope this doesn't confuse you guys. I know my hands keep jumping from side to side in the video, but as we say in the regular play, there's a reset there and there for the marketplace. It has the little black bag with the recycle, so the reset. So that happens automatically. If this ever fills up, the marketplace ever fills up, you reset the marketplace, and then there's certain things you do, right, when you do that. It's flipping a card, cleaning all people in the black market, putting them in the guardhouse, so on and so forth. All right, so how you play this is just the same. You take your turn, you always go first, then the AI goes. So you place a meeple. AI doesn't place a meeple right away. What they do is they flip one of their scheme cards, or you flip it, and you go ahead and read it. So this one, for example, is for the black market. So it tells you where to place your meeple up there in the brown, black market. And it says, gains the rewards below rather than those on the board, place on the first free space in the following order. Sorry, the lighting looks really great on video, but it's really horrible in here. All right, and I'm reading sideways. So what this would say if I pulled this card is he goes to the black market, the rightmost place. So here, here, or here, all right? So if I already had someone in the black market, I go there right away, and he pulls this card, he would go to that second spot, the first open spot. And right here, it tells you what to do for each spot, right? So if you're in the first spot, the AI loses a virtue, gains 2 marble. If they go to the second spot, right, add 1 future scheme card to the scheme's discard pile. So once obviously you use a card, you set it down, it makes a discard pile. So if he's in that second spot, what it's telling him to do is take one of these future schemes and go ahead and set it down in the discard pile. And there's things that will activate the shuffling of the discard pile. And it's not just if you run out of cards. If you run out of this deck, you always shuffle a discard pile like most games. All right, now the third spot, oh sorry, I did that wrong. If he goes to the third spot, he goes ahead and gets 2 marble. If he goes to the first spot, right, he gets 1 marble. So it tells you right here, you just got to pay close attention. It shows the actual spots there. The AI cards will tell you what to do. Once you do that action, you go ahead and set down the AI card, and the player goes again. Then it goes just back and forth between you and the AI. So the AI, once they're done with your turn, goes back to your turn, you place a meeple, goes back to the AI, you flip another card, right, to see what you need to do, and then you do what the card tells you. Once you've done that, you set the card down. Now, if the AI has no players that they can put out on the board, they've put all their meeples out, right? Then they go and return their meeples. So let's say all these meeples are out. Let's cover them. Ooh, really easy. So if it's the AI's turn and all their meeples out, you do not flip a card. What you do is you bring back all the meeples except for the guild hall, the black market, and the guardhouse. And like in the regular how to play, we explain about that. Same thing, you don't take them from there or from another player's board. So anybody in the black market, any meeples that are up here, right? And any meeples, and I gotta run to the other side and grab a couple of these. Run to the other side. Ruining the magic. Any meeples that are at the guild house or captured. So if they had no meeples, what they would do is they would take all their meeples that are placed in here, besides the guild hall, the black market, the guardhouse, or captured by another player. They go ahead and take all those meeples and they bring them back to themselves. They also would take the discard pile and they would shuffle up the discard pile. So let's say they have a handful of cards in the discard pile, and they might have some future scheme cards. They take all those and they shuffle them all together, right? And that's what I was talking about with the, there's certain things that get you to shuffle your discard pile. So if you're wondering why you would put your future card in the discard pile. Now, one other thing that I want to point out, I don't know why I didn't say it in the observation area, but I'm looking at the card. Once again, the card tells you how to score. The end of the game, you score the same. But also on this card, it tells you X for the black market stuff, and I'll explain in a second. X for black market and X for cathedral. What that means is if the AI's meeple drops down here, they still get the negative points. They still get these rewards right here of paying less taxes, which they wouldn't pay, right? Because they don't have silver. But it says right here that they can't work on the cathedral. So if they move down, they still, let's say he goes down to 4 virtue. This says he can't work on the cathedral. It's because it's Constantine, that's why I'm saying he. So the AI cannot work on the cathedral. Well, this says you ignore that. So you ignore this. Any other player, if red were to drop down here, right? If me as the first player were to drop down here, I wouldn't be able to work on the cathedral, right? But the AI, if the AI drops down there, it tells you right here on the board that they can still work on the cathedral. The same goes the other way, right? So if the AI gets up to 10, this says that if any player gets to 10, they can't use the black market. Well, it tells us on here that doesn't affect the AI. So the inability to use the black market or work on the cathedral is not affected by the virtue track. Now they would still get the points that are equated to these areas off the side, the plus or negative points, but they would not have to, or they would still be able to use the black market and still be able to use the, or work on the cathedral. Now I'm just picking these up. And that's pretty much the solo mode. I know I didn't go in depth on all the, you guys get to see my anal retentiveness. I didn't get to go into depth on all of the things that you can do, the specifics, but I did want to give you guys an overview of how it works with the AI. It works just like the normal game, except for the AI flips these cards. They get no buildings, they get no apprentices, they get no silver or any other supply. They take none of those supplies except for marble, and they use that for counting later on, right? And then, of course, instead of coins, they get marble. Those are the big differences in the two playing. It's very similar play style, and it can help you learn the game before you teach it to someone else because your actions are always the same. Now, before we finish, I just wanted to add one more thing I thought was really cool. So you can play a 2-player game with AI making a 3rd-player game, and they have a whole thing with the 2-player versus bot is what it's called, right? The 2-player versus bot setup, which is very similar. You just add some more cards and it sets up the 2nd player. And then, of course, they have the set of rules, which is very similar. You just throw in the bot. So what would happen is you go, then the other player goes, then the bot goes. Then you go, then the other player goes, then the bot goes, all right? And with both the single player and with the 2-player plus bot, the game ends once you hit a certain spot. In a 2-player game, once you fill up all these meeples down to this spot right here, which is 12 spots, right? It shows you on the board 3 plus, 4 plus, 5 plus. So when you're playing with you and the bot, it fills up to right there. You still have those 12 goes. And then once you hit that, just like the regular game, one person puts their meeple down, they build or they work on the cathedral. Everybody else gets one more turn, including the player who had set down their meeple, right, to go there. Same thing. At the end, scoring is exactly the same. There's some slight differences that they'll explain right here on the card. So beyond that, it's pretty much the same scoring and everything. So with that, this is just basically how you play. So some of the differences as I'm looking here, you can see that they don't have building cards, they still get negative, things like that still happen, right? But the scoring is pretty much the same. And you can find everything in the scoring guide that comes with the core thing, the core game. So it's interesting because there's a second booklet and it seems a little daunting. I feel like this could have been in the main one, but it gives you how all the apprentices work, gives you how all the buildings work, then it gives you how the single player, is only 2-page extra for the single player. And then the back is variable setup, which is something I didn't mention in the other video. All of these cards have a backside that gives you a different starting set of stuff. So that's basically how you play through the single player version of Architects of the West Kingdom. Very similar to the multiplayer, right? The 2 to 5 player version, but with some slight differences. The AI obviously plays off its own thing. And remember, you could play this as a 2-player versus bot mode. So I hope you guys enjoyed this how to play solo Architects of the West Kingdom. I'm Steven from Cardboard Coalition. I'll see you later, everybody. Bye.